Right up front.
Speakers are up front.
Yeah, the speakers get to be right by the podium so we can switch around, and then you can be right behind or next or whatever you want to do.
Hi, nice to meet you. Hey, Nikki.
Yes. So just right up front here. This will be great. Yes, and those of us who are speaking will jockey around. Okay.
Yeah, you don't want to string out.
Guys, I'm going to stick them under here. You can't.
I'll leave them.
Oh, you'll just forget them. Okay. Yeah, well, at least if you're
No pressure.
at least it's not only one of you, right? It can be a race to the first.
It's like James can go in.
Okay, I gotta get in here. Oops, sorry.
Well, you know what? We'll let you select this. You're welcome. I don't have anywhere to hook it really. I think that'll work. Okay, I need the minutes for it. Make it come in. I think we're going to actually just have to hold them.
That's what I'm thinking.
I think that having a...
That's what I was thinking. Morning, Amber.
I will... Let's see, and Amber, do you want to get a press packet out by the... Or did someone give you one? Okay, great. Okay, and if Sally is okay staying out, because we do still have some folks coming, yes, particularly Nicole Wagle, who is sort of pulling in from Baraboo at the last minute.
So I would just ask, and I know Rose would appreciate it, when you guys go up, if you could just make sure that we get to say, how to say and spell your name.
Okay, so the spelling of the name is right on the front sheet of the press packet. And you'll hear us each, I'll introduce everybody with the say the name, and everybody will say their own name as well. So.
Can you say something? Just start talking.
Okay. Good morning, and thank you everyone for being here. Which I will say again in another minute.
And you'll mean twice.
And I really do mean it.
Got one quick thing that's loaded up. Okay, Rose, I'm ready. Are you?
I'm ready.
All
Take
right.
it away.
Here we go. So good morning. Thank you everyone for being here and for caring about students and staff being safe at school. My name is Joanne Yonke, and I'm Policy Director for Wisconsin Family Ties. Our parent-peer specialists work statewide with families of children and youth with mental health and behavioral health needs. Some of the very children who are at most at risk for this bill, that will have a public hearing in just a few minutes. Together with Disability Rights Wisconsin, the protection and advocacy agency for the state of Wisconsin, we are hosting this event to let people know what the so-called Teacher Protection Act would really mean for Wisconsin students. And make no mistake, AB 693 is a stunning example of proposing to do more of the same thing and expecting a different result. This bill would elevate ineffective punitive responses that are already being overused on our most vulnerable students, students with mental health challenges, students of color, students with disabilities in general. A few examples. Did you know that 1 out of every 3 Wisconsin students with emotional behavioral disability was suspended in 2016? That is 11 times the rate of suspension for students without disabilities. And Wisconsin is a shameful 3rd in the nation for our rate of referring students with disabilities to law enforcement. If Wisconsin could arrest and suspend our way to school safety, we'd have been there long ago. I'm honored this morning to introduce our speakers. Shana Slammer, a psychotherapist from West Bend, Nicole Wagle, a parent from Wisconsin Dells, and her son Caleb, who are just making their way to the front in a minute here, Nikki Vander, an attorney and Madison School Board member, and Ken Taylor, Executive Director of Kids Forward. Thanks so much to all 4 of you.
Could Nicole go first? Because
we want to go?
A huge time crunch now.
Okay, could Nicole go first? I have. You know what? Let's let Shana go first because I need to get the printout for Nikki.
I'm glad to be able to speak to you today on the proposed Teacher Protection Act. My name is Shana Slammer, and I'm a psychotherapist who specializes in trauma, PTSD, and the poverty trauma cycle. In June 2016, I spoke as an expert to Dan O'Donnell in his studio to discuss the incidents of violence against teachers that he was investigating. I have to say that when I heard that blood on the blackboard story was being used as a justification for the Teacher Protection Act, I was truly horrified. If I had known my words would be used to argue for the further criminalization of students, I would never have agreed to the interview. All I wanted to do was bring a perspective of how wounded these young people can be. The name Blood on the Blackboard is sensationalizing as a title. This bill is not based on improving education or safety for anyone. In the interview, I spoke to the fear that many students might have with authority figures, the trauma they might experience at home, such as sexual abuse, domestic violence, police contact, hunger, etc. The connection I was trying to make was that students with that background might be more easily agitated when arriving at school. These students would seem to have significant risk for feeling hyper-agitated, which is a symptom of PTSD, that would make them more likely to respond with violence when feeling threatened. Feeling threatened can look to those students as someone redirecting them, or in their face or in their space. We need more training for staff on trauma-informed care and de-escalation techniques. These same behaviors are also witnessed in students who process information differently or who have trouble regulating their emotions. I work with many students who are diagnosed on the autism spectrum or have emotional behavioral diagnoses. These students don't react the same way we expect a child without disabilities or trauma histories to act. They tend to get immediately defensive, which is a fight or flight response, also known as the sympathetic nervous system in the brain. These children tend to increase their behavioral display instead of processing that responding to redirection would be most effective. They have racing thoughts and process differently. Therefore, their responses look aggressive or oppositional. They're actually usually scared or embarrassed and don't have the skills to repair the minor damage they may have caused initially. Instead, they create more damage. They display anger, self-harm, may get aggressive towards a staff member who's trying to redirect or escort the child from the room. I'm not suggesting that we allow for students to harm themselves or others. I am suggesting that specific training or teams should be utilized when dealing with an agitated student. This is true of students who don't have disabilities as well. Staff should be trained to know to keep extra distance, keep our tone firm yet not too loud, have our hands where they can be seen by the student, clear the room of any other students, meaning remove the audience. Wait for the child to have extra time to process that they need to leave the area and go talk about it in another room, excuse me, and hands-on as a last resort for escorting, and only by police or staff trained in doing this. Putting hands on any agitated person will automatically escalate the situation. These students often have the lowest self-esteem to begin with, self-identifying as bad or naughty or crazy. We know it isn't always possible for the student to have their one safe staff member available. I often have students want to visit the school nurse, for example, when upset. This isn't always ideal. This is why we need many staff trained with trauma-informed care and specialized verbal de-escalation techniques. This will end up costing less time used in the classroom by students who become distractions, less physical violence or restraint, and more education time for all. The mental health field learned long ago that criminalizing behavior or restraining humans is the most traumatizing response we can have. It also resulted in injuries and deaths for patients. Having a bill that sends these students into a criminal track instead of treatment or following their IEPs is harmful and will impact their ability to get an education despite their disabilities. We need to reject the Teacher Protection Act altogether. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Nicole Wagle, and I am the mother of 3 differently abled boys. I am here because of AB 693, known as the Teacher Protection Act, to share with you the impact of police involvement in school discipline that I have witnessed with my son, Caleb. Caleb is now 11, but his journey with this type of interaction began when he was in kindergarten. Caleb is diagnosed with brain damage, is on the autism spectrum, has severe anxiety, and is nearly blind in his left eye. The memory I share is from when Caleb was 9 years old. It is not the last time he experienced police involvement at school, but is one of the worst times. While this is no longer my son's reality, as after much hard work, it is the reality of so many others. I share with Caleb's permission, as we both have a mission to create a world that children do not need to recover from. December 8th, 2015. Today I watched again brokenhearted as we failed another child. I watched as this child was brought in handcuffs out to a squad car. As the adults talked about him like he was a thing and not a human being. As they talked through what had happened, trying to find fault with this child again. I stepped in. I hugged this child and told him he was safe until he believed. I told him I was there and held him close until he could feel my love pouring into his every cell, until he felt like a human being again. This child is my son, and he is 9. We continue to fail him because we blame him and say he should know better, do better. We fail him by blaming me and my bad parenting. We fail him by reinforcing his belief that mom is the only adult who cares and loves him, who is safe. We fail him by teaching and showing him, by not teaching and showing him and modeling what is correct and true and good. When I came upon him and acted in love, he did not hurt me. He was not a danger to himself and others. He was not a child in need of handcuffs or worthy of the disorderly conduct charge they slapped him with. He sobbed. He melted. Tonight at home, he had a meltdown. While for us, it usually seems to come out of nowhere, for him, there is always a reason. His anxiety got the better of him, and he went into his flight or fight mode. It wasn't pretty. When he began to come down from it, he started to self-hate. He talked about what a bad boy he is and how his life isn't worth anything. He said he should die. He pulled out a pair of play handcuffs and tried to handcuff himself behind his own back. My son had learned the lesson that was taught to him. He is bad, and he deserves to be punished by being handcuffed and carted off. He encouraged myself and others to call the police on him. This breaks my heart. He took a toy gun and tried to shoot himself in the head. He cried over wanting to die and what he had done when he was upset. My words of reassurance were not enough. It will take me years of loving him, of reminding him every single day that he matters, that he has value, that we don't handcuff kids, that this is not the answer, that grown-ups make mistakes, and that he should not have happened to him. This has left a mark on my son, and my heart aches for him. In the 2 years since then, I am proud to say that Caleb has been recovering, healing. His last police involvement was November 2016. I then pulled him out of school to homeschool him and began the complicated process of helping him work through his trauma. The first few months, he wouldn't leave the house. His self-esteem was extremely low, and triggers about even me teaching him were overwhelming for both of us. I had to tread lightly. This past fall, after learning about himself, his emotions, his feelings, and how to be in relationship with them, Caleb asked to return to school. He has had no police involvement and works very hard with his teacher to create a safe environment for everyone. This is his goal. The effects linger from his past, however. One day this past fall, when Caleb was having a challenging day at school, his teacher picked up her phone to call me for ideas, and Caleb became very fearful that she was calling the police on him. This escalated the situation instantly. Previous teachers' actions had directly compromised the trust his current teacher worked so hard to build. We worked through it, though, but it was rough. AB 693 would compromise trust by forcing principals to refer students to police in situations where they are now allowed to choose compassion instead of trauma. If we are to expect our children to trust us, we must be trustworthy. If we want to feel safe around them, we must create a safe environment for them. We cannot expect from them that which we are not willing to be ourselves. We simply must be better than AB 693. Thank you.
Hi. Hello, my name is Nikki Vander, Melon, and I'm here to speak against the Teacher Protection Act, numbers AB 698. I'm a criminal defense attorney, a Madison School Board member. I speak on my own behalf, but most important, I'm a disability advocate and an autistic adult. As an autistic adult, AB 698 just scares me. 693 scares me, and it scares me greatly. Very simply, it sounds great on paper. We want to help students. We want to protect teachers, but don't let this act fool you. We are neither protecting teachers nor students. One of the most egregious parts of this bill is that it increases the school-to-prison pipeline. We're putting children in the criminal system for truancy, for having a meltdown, for a mental health breakdown. These are kids crying out for help. They are not asking for punishment, and compassion must be used. I'm not saying we should put a teacher's life at risk. Please do not get me wrong, but this type of bill will not help. The part of me that really is appalling is the fact that we failed to determine the term in custody in this bill. That means we could question a child indefinitely with no rights. We could hold the child for hours without mentioning they're in custody. But what child is going to know they're free to go? They're not. That's not common knowledge. And that, very simply, as a member on the MMSD school board, I've seen the work we've done on restorative justice, on working with individuals with disabilities, on working to create a supportive environment. Bills such as this would destroy any trust there is. It would destroy how children are treated, and it would force principals to report children and take away their local control and discretion solely based on that. That's not the kind of school we want to live in. That's not the kind of world I want our children to live in. Our state motto is forward. There's no reason we need to go backwards with this type of bill. I remember when there weren't protections for students. When I was a child, I attended an elementary school in which I had a teacher order the class to laugh at me, a student teacher, because I rocked back and forth for being autistic. He ordered the entire class to laugh at me, and that was his way of solving my behavior problem. That day I became an advocate. I am going to and will continue to advocate against bills such as the Teacher Protection Act, because both teachers and students deserve dignity, and this act preserves neither. I understand the intentions of this bill were good, Unfortunately, the consequence of it will not be so positive.
Good morning. My name is Ken Taylor, and I'm the Executive Director of Kids Forward, formerly known as the Wisconsin Council on Children and Families. Kids Forward aspires to make Wisconsin a place where every child thrives by advocating for effective, long-lasting solutions to break down the barriers to success for every child, every family, and every community. Teachers absolutely deserve safe working environments, but the punitive actions promoted in this bill will do little to protect teachers, while at the same time making it harder for students to achieve their full potential. Wisconsin educators, policymakers, and parents have worked hard in recent years to reduce the number of students who are suspended, hard work that would be counteracted by the provisions in this bill. I'm particularly concerned about the disproportionate impacts this bill will have on students of color. According to a study released by the Civil Rights Project of UCLA a few years ago, Wisconsin's high school suspended Black students at a rate greater than any other state in the country. And when we compare the suspension rates of different races and ethnicities, we found again that Wisconsin was the worst in the nation. Their analysis showed that at the high school level, Wisconsin has the largest black-white suspension gap in the country. And current data from the Wisconsin Department of Public Instruction shows that compared to white students, American Indian students are 3 times as likely to be suspended. Latino children are over twice as likely to be suspended. And African American students are nearly 9 times as likely to be suspended as white students. So while the reasons for these disparities are complex, one of the powerful drivers of this is the subjectivity of adults in school systems. So studies show that students of color are more likely to be more severely punished than white students for the exact same action. This bill will make that even worse. This will increase the number of suspensions and keep more kids out of the classroom, making it harder for students to succeed. It will also increase the amount of contact students have with law enforcement, as Nikki talked about the school-to-prison pipeline, which would also have disproportionate impacts on kids of color because we know that system also has challenges when it comes to inequities. And at the same time, this bill offers no additional resources or new approaches for improving classroom safety by addressing student behaviors, teaching conflict resolution, providing more support to students who are struggling, or more support to teachers who are struggling with challenging behaviors in the classrooms. Our schools need more resources, more support, and more ways to address the issues that underlie some of these challenging behaviors. And as it turns out, when there are high levels of suspensions, the kids who aren't suspended are also harmed. New research shows that the high suspension rates harm math and reading scores of non-suspended students because they also respond negatively to the high level of anxiety and disconnection that they see in their classrooms when there's lots of suspensions. So not only does this bill fail to accomplish its goal of keeping teachers safe, it adds to barriers for success for students and does nothing to support what we know to be effective in helping all students thrive. And for those reasons, Kids Forward opposes AB 693. Thank you very much.
On behalf of Wisconsin Family Ties and Disability Rights Wisconsin, we deeply appreciate our speakers being willing to come and share so powerfully from their experience and their expertise. It's coming right up on 9 o'clock, and so I think we do need to move as a group over to the hearing. I do want to encourage that if there are questions for individuals, that you catch us on the way and ask us at that point. Thank you very much for coming. We very much appreciate it.
Yeah, I know you well enough.
Nice job.
I had to have